sexy on Secular Sexuality.
Hello and welcome to Secular Sexuality. I'm your host, Christy Powell, joined by Darrel, our producer emeritus and founder. And joining us this week is Ash West of QueerBomb. Howdy, Ash.
Hi, how you doing?
Hey, doing great. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Tell folks just very briefly what QueerBomb is and why you're here to talk about it.
Well, QueerBomb is Austin's alternative pride celebration. It is a way to give our community free pride so that the underprivileged portions of our community are able to attend and participate. We have a community outreach with nonprofit tables at the beginning. We do a rally with a number of speakers talking about their experience, as well as usually a call to action. And then we take to the streets and march down the straightest road in Texas, West 6th. And then we come on back to our venue, which was Fair Market this year. And we have a dance celebration. This year we included a mini ball as kind of a additional little thing. This was our 10th annual QueerBomb, so we thought we'd kick it up a notch.
Add on. Yeah, absolutely. I love that idea of a free pride, this idea that pride is, it's such a flexible noun. You know, this idea that it's something that can be tangible, it's something that can be consumed, it's something that, it's a label that we use to describe all of these events. And, we're going to be talking about Pride Month, Pride Season. Here in Austin, of course, we delay ours until August because nothing goes with glitter and boas like just being out in the Austin, Texas heat in August. That was just a brilliant decision by our city council and the powers that be and all of that. But in any case, in my mind, QueerBomb is for Austin very much like sort of the kickoff to the Pride season.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, we are going to be talking all things Pride. We're going to be learning more about Ash and about QueerBomb and kind of getting into it. So we've got some lines open. We'd love to hear your thoughts. We'd love to hear your experiences with Pride and anything else that might be on your mind tonight. We're here at 512-686-0279. Okay. Well, with all of that said, tell me more about QueerBomb. Tell me, how did QueerBomb get started?
Well, QueerBomb got started as a protest against Austin Pride. Okay. Because it was exclusionary. It costs a bunch. You had to register as a group. They were, I believe, there were rules against what you could wear. Like if you were in the leather community, you couldn't necessarily just wear your harness and whatever.
I love the idea that Austin is the type of city where you can go topless anywhere, but at a Pride event, you wouldn't be able to wear your leather gear, for instance.
Yeah, and that was kind of ridiculous. So there were a number of reasons that QueerBomb got started by the original founders. I'm not one of the original founders. I've only been an organizer for QueerBomb for about 3 years now. But so the original founders wanted to bring the grassroots of Pride, back to the community. We wanted to have a Pride that was by and for the community, without corporate sponsors that, only support us during the month of June so that they can say to all of us, hey, we support you, and then
we use money from that 15% of the population.
Exactly. And then go behind our backs and directly fund lobbies that directly hurt us. So
I mean, that message feels incredibly relevant now, maybe even more so than 10 years ago. We'll talk a little bit about the history of things, but we very much plan on getting into some ideas about what the hell these corporations are doing as they get involved and invested in Pride, what we should be, as a community, doing about that, how we should feel about that, and just what all of this looks like.
Yeah. For example, I feel like so many of the corporate sponsors for a number of the prides nationwide are banks and booze vendors. And there's a serious issue with alcoholism in our community. And so that was one of the reasons why QueerBomb this year and the organizing committee for QueerBomb specifically made a point to have a number of our fundraising events be sober events because many people in our community have families.
Yeah.
And you can't just bring the family to a bar.
Yeah, or feel excluded because they are sober or they've struggled with these different things. I mean, anytime we're talking about the queer community writ large, we have to be acknowledging the role of trauma and kind of the way that dovetails into substance abuse, you know?
Exactly.
To be very clear, of course, we're not suggesting that being queer, however you define that or however that represents you, means that you draw trauma, but just that your experience in our country, in our culture as it stands right now, means that it's very hard to make it to the legal drinking age without having experienced a lot of that type of persecution, a lot of those problems.
Exactly. And so being that QueerBomb specifically makes a point to be an inclusive space, we felt like we were doing a large portion of our community a disservice by not having at least one or more of our fundraising events be sober events, especially being that QueerBomb itself has quite the active bar.
yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, it's a party, it's a festival.
It is.
We should acknowledge that.
It is.
We're not necessarily anti-alcohol, but we do recognize that is a sticking point for a lot of folks, particularly in these marginalized communities that QueerBomb's here to represent.
Exactly. So we made that kind of a focus this year.
Yeah, that makes all the sense in the world to me. How about yourself? I mean, how did you get involved in QueerBomb? What drew you to this?
Well, I, in my younger years, was a lot more active with organizing various things. I was one of the founding members of a GSA in my high school here in Texas after I moved to Texas. And I moved to Austin 11 years ago and really hadn't found my niche. I hadn't really found anything that really stuck as far as community or involvement. And I found QueerBomb in its second year and was like, wow, this is amazing. So this is Austin. I can get behind this. And it took me a number of years to be able to come back to it. And I wanted to get involved, but I didn't know where or how. And then a few years ago, I saw a call in the Austin Chronicle saying, the founders of QueerBomb have been doing this and they really need a break. So if you want this to happen, come on down.
And you took on that call to action.
I did. And along with a number of other people. And we banded together, and I didn't know hardly anyone in that room. And some of those people are still organizing with me, and they're some of my close friends now, and it's been wonderful. Not to say that there hasn't been some adversity. There's always something when you're doing grassroots organizing, but it's been wonderful.
Yeah, and so great to hear you found that community. Go right ahead, Darrel.
Well, I'm just in awe of your organizational skills, because that I've helped organize a number of conferences in my life, and they're always massively difficult. So what you're pulling off is amazing. That's cool.
Well, and especially being here at the ACA, like I understand how volunteer work works, as opposed to like a professional conference or things like that. It is difficult to herd cats and everything else. So yeah, it is an impressive feat to be. You were telling me, I think beforehand, that there was some 5,000 attendees at this year's event.
That is a rough estimate.
Okay, sure.
I have not. Record. Yeah, don't hold me to that.
Well, I know that when I got online the next morning, that the pictures were just strolling through all of my feeds and all my social media. All the cool people who weren't stuck at work the way that I was seem to be having an incredible time. So it's a very interesting organization with a really important mission, especially as we get more into this conversation about pride, where it came from, and kind of where it is now, some of the stumbles that we're seeing. But before we get into all of that, I wanted to jump on the phones and talk to Chris in Missouri. Hey, Chris, you are on the air with us.
Hello. How are you doing?
And not too bad. Tell us what's on your mind tonight.
So I'm actually was calling for a friend, and he's right next to me.
Oh,
and
okay.
He's in a situation where he is in a non-poly relationship with someone who's rather self-conscious about how they feel about each other, and that she's good enough and all this. And he's wanting to bring up possibly talking about, what do you think about polyamory, and maybe any experience with that, or kind of just bring it up, maybe not even suggest it. But he's afraid that it will hurt her feelings or make her feel like she's not good enough. I was wondering if you had possibly any suggestions and maybe how to be conscious of that.
Yeah, I definitely hear that question. I would say that it's worth noting that when you're in an existing relationship and you're wanting to open it up or you're wanting to change it in any way, that becomes a negotiation, and it's a tricky one because there's sort of an already understood dynamic. There's already sort of an obligation to one another, whether that was ever made explicit. We can talk about the importance of not just poly folks, but everybody going into their relationships with a willingness to negotiate and an understanding that there's not a cookie cutter set way of doing it. But I also recognize that people change and that we have to be constantly able to talk about these things, constantly able to ask for what we want, or even just broach the subject. So that being said, I would probably direct you first and foremost towards Opening Up, which is a great book by Tristan Taormino. Of course, everybody in the poly community will throw things like The Ethical Slut or More Than Two. Those are great books and really interesting things to look at. I love the work of Eli Sheff and things like that, but I'd recommend Opening Up. And then beyond that, Darrel, I'd love to hear kind of what your take might be.
I would look at all those books, and more importantly, Chris, I would suggest to your friend that they read the books together, so that they kind of get the questions coming from them through the book. But that may be too much to ask if they're just getting started. I think a good therapist might be a poly-friendly therapist or an open relationships type therapist would be in order if that's if you think that is. If it's something you really need to renegotiate. The issue is, and I totally agree with Christy, is how do you renegotiate relationships that are based on a whole different set of assumptions, the monogamy narrative that we have in our culture. And it's difficult. I don't think it'll be as difficult in the future as it is now, because we're still dealing with old narrative stuff. But yeah. That
I think like one of the thoughts is that he is more sexual and really desires, the pleasure from that. And she is much, much, much less so. And, it's just it's a difference in that respect. And so I think one of the things that he's thinking about is this idea of, you don't want to lose that relationship. You don't want that to be broken, mm-hmm. but also being able to have those desires fulfilled at the same time.
Yeah, I think a libido mismatch is something that often brings people to asking these questions. And one of the reasons that I recommend opening up is because opening up really walks you through the process of considering what form of consensual non-monogamy or ethical non-monogamy you might be looking at, because, we broached all of this through the lens of polyamory, but that may not be what your friend is looking for. If he's looking for a play partner, if he's looking for an additional sexual partner, or just some sort of sexual outlet outside of his existing relationship, polyamory may or may not actually meet that need. And so asking yourself those questions, or him asking himself, I think really all of us should be having these negotiations about what we want from our partners or partner or ourselves. And so that book in particular is good about sort of laying out maybe 10 different sort of flavors, if you will, of non-monogamy, and helping you walk through what some of the expectations or challenges for each of them might be.
Ash, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, to be perfectly honest, I haven't read many of those, and wasn't really a fan of The Ethical Slut.
It's kind of my least favorite.
Yeah,
it's very popular. It's a little dated.
It's dated, and it's very couple-centric.
Yeah, I buy that.
And that has never been my structure. So I would just suggest going into the conversation with an understanding that there is a possibility of hurting your partner's feelings because they already have that insecurity. And so you might start it with some form of reassurance.
Yeah. I mean, really leaning into that, making sure that you're offering kindness and comfort.
Absolutely.
In a lot of ways. And, I don't want to make it sound by any means as if love, sex, relationships, as if these things aren't important. I mean, as a therapist, that's entirely what I focus on. Doing this show, this is what we talk about. I mean, these things are incredibly important, so I don't want to for a second undervalue them. At the same time, I really encourage people who are struggling in their dating lives to see their relationships as kind of a video game. That's not to not take it seriously, but to de-stress it a little bit, to recognize and come at it from sort of this abundance mentality. Not that you can plug and play and replace people, not that there's plenty of fish in the sea. I'm not suggesting any of that, but just recognizing that whatever it is that you come to, that's okay. And that it's all right to risk things, and that in the pursuit of who you are and what you want and the lifestyle that you want to lead, that it's okay to experiment and ask these interesting questions without there necessarily being all of this pressure to, well, this is what I have decided, this is the way it's going to be. If she doesn't like it, then it's going to be this huge fight. You don't have to have that sort of fear. I like to think that in all of our relationships, we can just sort of float an idea by and see how it lands, because she might be incredibly excited by the idea. She might be horribly, horribly offended, but I would hope that in any good relationship, you could at least discuss it without feeling obligated to move forward with anything.
And honestly, it might even take a load off as far as maybe she's feeling insecure because of her low sex drive, and maybe it opening up that relationship could actually bring y'all closer together by taking that stress off of the relationship.
Yeah, absolutely.
That both parties have. And sometimes if you can get to what those are, I mean, for example, this notion that you're mine forever, that means that if at any time in the next 50 or 60 years we break apart, well, then we're a failure in our relationship.
Mm-hmm.
There are strong messages like that that people carry around in their head. And I think if you can acknowledge those and talk out loud about, what are the underlying beliefs and assumptions that we have, and then are they true for us, for our relationship? But back to what Ash said, this is a kind of a side off story. I was at let's just say a adult party one time, and we were playing around a bit, and one of my girlfriends was there, and she was talking to another woman there, and she said something like, if I was married to Darrel, I'd make him go get another girlfriend. Because our sex, our desire levels were different enough,
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, and that I was hilarious at the time because I've always had a pretty high sex drive, but I think that almost every, and Christy, you've probably seen it too. Uh, it's the rare relationship where your sex drives, your desire drives are equal.
Yeah,
It almost
absolutely.
Exactly.
that way. So there's some people, and I'll suggest this to your friend Chris. Some people make up the difference with pornography. Other people make up the difference by maybe going to a strip club or looking at movies or something. There's different ways to make up the difference between the two of you. But I mean, that may not be satisfactory. It might be. I don't know. But I would want to be out loud about how we talked about those things. For example, is your friend's girlfriend, would she be upset if he was using porn to satisfy himself when they weren't together or something? If there's an upset there, then you got a bigger problem than just desire difference, because there's underlying beliefs about, is my body, do you own my body? Do I own my body? Do I get to do with my body what I want, or can you tell me what I can and can't do with my body? And those are there's lots of assumptions in here. So
Yeah, I think that's true, Darrell. I don't know about you, but I know that when I'm working with a client, I never really ask if they're monogamous or polyamorous or whatever. I just ask, how monogamous are you? Because I do believe that in any relationship, whether it's you're never allowed to talk to somebody of the gender that you're attracted to, or you're never allowed to use pornography, or you're never allowed to go to a strip club, or there are gradients that we all fall on. So this idea that there are monogamous people and non-monogamous people, I feel like kind of misses the boat a little bit. And before you jump right into, hey, baby, maybe we should be polyamorous, asking yourself, what is the maybe problem you're trying to solve, or what is the goal that you're hoping to be directed towards? And then having an open mind and an open conversation about how to get to that place.
I really appreciate all the advice, and I took notes that way I wouldn't forget anything. I wrote down open for the books, Opening Up and The Ethical Slut. Was there other ones that you suggested?
Yeah, I think for me, more than Ethical Slut, I would say More Than Two is a really comprehensive and, to me, interesting presentation of polyamory specifically. Again, opening up just because it covers a lot more than just polyamory. But I'll also say that I'll put links to all of this in show notes that'll be in the comments section of the episode. So you can certainly come back and take a look at all of that when we're all said and done here.
All right. Well, I really appreciate it. I love the show, and my friend, he's sitting here right by me, so he was listening to the whole thing, and I really thank you guys. Thank you all.
Yeah,
Thank
absolutely. Thanks so much for giving us a call.
Thanks for calling in.
You're welcome.
All right. You have a great night.
You too.
I have a question for Ash.
Sure.
Is that, Ash, you've been doing this for 3 years, and I know when you do that kind of thing, you find out things you didn't know about yourself. You find out things, you learn things about your environment. I'm just curious, and this is kind of a springing it on you kind of question, but anything that jumps out of you that, wow, you didn't know this 3 years ago about yourself, or you didn't know this 3 years ago about our community, or, some interesting or something that's, helped you grow. I'm curious how your involvement has had an impact on you.
Well, there have been a number of incidents and whatnot in trying to get QueerBomb going year after year. There's always been some major wrench in the gears.
I mean, just broad strokes, are we talking about conflict with the city or with vendors or within the organization? I mean, what kinds of hurdles are y'all up against?
All of those.
All of those things.
All of those.
Yeah, I believe that.
I have had to, we've had permitting issues. We've had conflict within the organization, which has come to legal, like going to court, which was unfortunate. There have been threats on my life and other people's lives. We've had speakers drop out because of that. And I always thought I worked well under pressure. But this really, really made me rethink that at times, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, it's a beautiful thing that you're doing, and whether we're talking about QueerBomb specifically or kind of more Pride in general, it's this idea of letting people know that there's a community, of letting people outside of the LGBTQIA++ umbrella know that, we exist and all of this. So it's a way for people to feel safe. But it sounds like in a lot of ways, by kind of being the vanguard for that you've come under a lot of fire and maybe lost some of your sense of safety. Is that true?
A little bit. I mean, by and large, I feel fine. But there have definitely been points where I was at my wit's end.
Sure.
And we had so much going on last year that many of us, we lost a number of volunteers last year because of the threats and other issues that were going on, and we got a late start on our fundraising season because of that, and because I really just didn't have the wherewithal to make it happen any earlier than we did, because I was still reeling from those threats against us and myself individually. So, I always felt like I was this strong, amazing person who can really handle anything. And it really showed me that I can stumble. But, we made it and had one of the best, and we had one of the best QueerBombs on record, as far as I'm concerned, this year.
That's a hell of a thing to be proud of.
Yeah.
Darrel,
well, I would just say, I'm sorry. I would just say that's amazing. And I've never been involved in a major, in any kind of significant organizational thing that there wasn't that kind of conflict. It just seems always endemic somewhere, but you found a way to find the strength inside of you and keep going. And I wish, I see so many organizations fall apart over the smallest amount of conflict when it's just going to be there. And I guess it sounds like you've learned it's there, and we're going to push through it.
It is. And honestly, I wouldn't been able to push through it as well, I believe, without the other organizers. Honestly, we absolutely have some conflict, but when it matters, we have each other and we pull through. We put the things aside that we may have issue with. Maybe someone's too loud or they talk over people sometimes. But when it matters, we all step up to the plate. And
you know what your mission is and you keep your focus on that.
Absolutely. This year has just been stellar.
Great. Love hearing that.
Yeah, let me ask you this. What is the pressure like coming from the outside, coming from not necessarily the queer community, but from the religious community, coming from the city, coming from, not on my street, not in my town? Have y'all experienced a lot of that sort of like pushback or even threats and things?
Well, not as much as I would expect, honestly. For example, Pride in Salt Lake City has picketers all over the place. I remember being at the first Dyke March way back in like 2001, 2003, and having picketers with these signs getting right up in your face, but not touching you because that would get them in trouble.
Then they get in trouble.
But they'd be right up in your face with their picket signs. You're going to hell. And luckily, surprisingly enough, we don't really have that much here in Austin. We do have the oddball people here and there during the march that will, unfortunately, come up to people and, get in their face, or maybe try to cop a feel on someone who's topless, which is just, I don't even know.
I hear that, yeah. For the podcast listeners,
that just grinds my gears.
That
just grinds my gears. But so we have a few isolated incidents, but it's not like we have large groups of people coming to protest us, thank goodness.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's great to hear, and that's one of the beautiful things about this city. I mean, we were talking before the show about, Austin being something of a beacon, but I know that that's not necessarily true everywhere. Darrel, you and I were talking before the show just about your experience at Kansas City Pride this year and just sort of how huge the crowds were. It's, I guess, encouraging to know that we're expanding, in terms of acceptance in our country, as much as you might not get that feeling from the news these days. Those are kind of like moments and blips on the radar, but the trend feels like it's in the right direction.
Yeah, a friend of mine, we were comparing notes about Pride this year, and she said, there, like I said before the show, there probably were close to 50,000 people there. I think somebody told me Kansas City is the third largest Pride event in the nation. But I don't know if that's true or not. But
I don't know if that's true either.
50,000. I mean, it was humongous. I mean, just amazing. I could not believe how many people were there. But her comment was this. She said, "You cannot deny this. This is we are turning a corner, and cannot deny this." And I agree. This ain't going backwards, and I don't care what the religion. I live 45 miles from Westboro Baptist Church, so I know exactly what you were experiencing in Salt Lake City when they were in your face, because they're in our face. They even go to Salt Lake City, I'm sure, but they got the Mormons.
They go all over the place.
Yeah, or at least sign up and say that they're going to go somewhere and then, don't actually show. But, I have to say, one of my favorite artist, George Rodrigue, I heard him speak about how kind of right before a culture dies, how there's this sort of death rattle, as there aren't any people that are naturally invested in it, or as a society just starts to end, how it becomes sort of a caricature of itself, and how there's like this exaggerated version of it. And in thinking about that, and in thinking about sort of the tension towards Pride, and how now it's no longer necessarily, rioting against police and things like that happened at Stonewall that kicked all of this off, but instead it is the almost comical Westboro Baptists and these things. Darrel, I can't help but think about the God virus and just that idea of the antibodies and how all of that functions when religion is feeling threatened and trying to, I guess, maintain its control over our minds.
Right. Well, and fundamentalism gets stronger at that point. I mean, you see it.
That caricaturization is fundamentalism in a way.
Yeah, exactly. And they become the shock troops of whatever the religion was, whether that's Christianity or Mormonism or Islam, it doesn't matter. And when they're feeling threatened, they create those shock troops. And basically, people that are willing to go out and do whatever to defend the religion. I think we're seeing that turn the corner right now, for sure.
Sure hope so.
Yeah, well, it's exciting to feel like things are headed in the right direction and to feel like, gay acceptance, the Obergefell decision, and the expansion of gay marriage, and all of these things are going in the right direction, even as we are noticing in the news, the trans military ban, and we've elected this president that tweets out about Pride Month and about the importance of the LGBTQ community, while everybody who's reading that is just wondering why.
Right.
Like, who is this for? Who is reading that tweet from Donald Trump and thinking, yeah, I'm sure he believes that. I'm sure he means that. So, as we talk about the expansion of Pride, I think it's important to talk about some of the problems that come with getting bigger and with the expansion of acceptance, whether that is sort of these awkward corporate sponsorships or these, sort of fake gestures. And I think it's worth asking the question of whether these gestures are fake, whether they're hurtful. I mean, as somebody who, has dedicated all of this effort to making Pride available and accessible to folks who don't have money or don't have access otherwise, how does it feel to see, Smirnoff vodka or Guinness beer or whatever else, like really pushing and promoting Pride with these rainbow logos and things?
Well, I think it's a bunch of bullshit, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, here, let's hear it. Okay.
I mean, I want to see, if we're going to have corporate sponsorship, which we do all across the nation for Pride, which in and of itself I feel is wrong, because many of these corporations don't give back to the community. They're just slapping a rainbow on their damn logo and then saying, look, we support the community.
And donating their money to...
give us money.
Like the Fellowship of Christian Athletes or the Salvation Army.
Yeah,
or these
who
other...
actively fund things that directly hurt our community, like Chick-fil-A, for example, and the awful, Pray the Gay Away camps or whatever that they fund, and conversion therapy, and just having explicit anti-LGBT rules and whatnot. I can't get behind that. I feel like if you are going to accept corporate sponsorship as a Pride organization, you should vet your funders, your sponsors, because if they aren't supporting our community all during the year, then they're against our community as far as I'm concerned. And I mean, many corporations don't necessarily have anti-LGBT rules and whatnot because they want to be welcoming to everybody in that they want everybody to feel welcome to give them money.
Right, exactly. I mean, that's the nature of capitalism is wanting to appeal to a wide audience, which is not in and of itself problematic.
But when you have pride parades that are all corporate floats, like the Bank of America float and, whatever, they are doing so much harm to not only our community, but the earth itself. I mean, Bank of America is one of the funding banks for pipelines and whatnot that are actively currently destroying and poisoning our waterways. We don't have to go further into that.
Yeah, no, I hear that anger and I appreciate it. I do want to mention the Human Rights Campaign Foundation offers a rating system where they look at corporate policy and corporate equality and give a number basically to whether or not an organization supports their employees' choice of partner, their policies of protecting against queer discrimination and these different things. And I think that that's a useful marker to understand whether a corporation is maybe deserving of your money or maybe not as two-faced as some other organizations can be. But it also begs and I do have a link to that on the footnotes that we'll put in the page so you can take a look. So it's about a 100-page document. It's pretty extensive going through the Fortune 500 and others, but it begs the question for me, is there any corporation, I mean, is corporate sponsorship on any level, not just, obviously not from the two-faced deceptive ones that are taking in gay money and then funneling it towards these really anti-LGBTQ organizations. But stepping away from that, is there any organization, is there any corporation that you feel has a reason to sponsor Pride? And is it okay to accept corporate sponsorship and to include that pseudo-allyship or that self-serving offering?
Well, as a Pride organization gets larger, like, for example, QueerBomb, as it gets bigger and as the years go on, it's harder and harder to raise the money without having sponsors.
Sure.
Because we don't. We don't have corporate sponsors. It's part of our manifesto. And ground rules that we don't. But it is harder and harder to raise funds in order to have the event. And
venues are getting bigger. The staffing is getting bigger. Even if it's all volunteers, you need somebody to organize.
Exactly. And so also, the venue gets more expensive too.
Yeah.
But the question is, for me, for example, we're trying to get our 501c3 status. I'm writing up the paperwork and we just need the money to file it.
Again, that's tough to do without sponsorship.
Exactly. But we're trying to do that so we can lift the burden off of our community who's already strapped enough as it is. So the question is, for me, how do we balance not having corporate sponsors with also not trying to squeeze every dime out of our community in order to give the community this free event that costs thousands of dollars? And so while we absolutely are not going to accept sponsors, like Smirnoff and whatever else, the question is it okay to get grant money from the city. Is that a sponsorship that would be all right? And those are questions we're going to have to ask ourselves in the coming months while we try to get our 501c3 status up and going, or whether or not we're just going to have to scrap it because enough people don't want us to accept grant money from the city. Many people have issue with the fact that Austin and its city council or whatever are actively supporting gentrification and thus pushing out the underprivileged in our community because we can no longer afford to live here. So these are a number of questions that we're struggling with as we speak, and I can't really answer that. I know that I would like to be able to reduce the stress on the community so we can, and be able to get grant funding so that we can maybe have a few more community events that help the community and are less, hey, give us money.
Yeah, don't feel like they're pinching.
Exactly. So it's a real, we're having to walk a tightrope here, and just hopefully it'll work itself out.
I never thought of it in terms of, I recognize, of course, that this is for the queer community, and the donations and things, the fundraising events are largely targeted towards, and, all of that is something I've certainly been aware of, but I don't think it ever really occurred to me how much the community is squeezed for these types of things. Like one of my favorite queer bars here in town, I feel like almost every single time I go there just to go because it's a great bar. But half of the time I show up and there are tables and booths and people vending and trying to fundraise. And while I love and support that, and I'm not trying to get in the way of it, it does make me realize how much pressure there is on the community for these things.
Well, because we have so much coming at us from all directions, and we need these services that these nonprofits are offering, including QueerBomb, but they can't run without funds. And so, unfortunately, many of the events that go on in town year-round for the community are also fundraisers. And so, like this year, I think was our one of the lowest turnouts for our online GoFundMe because, one, so many people are tired of those kind of things, and two, so many of us are working 3 jobs just to be able to live in Austin.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm getting like 30 emails a day from different presidential candidates, and I want to support many of them. But yeah, it does feel like you are just throwing things at a problem that's a pretty endless pit.
Yeah, exactly. And so we really want to reduce the stress while also not compromising our ideals. And so that is going to be something that we're going to
balancing act.
Yeah, exactly. Because
tension.
Yeah, I mean, I am not going to give in to corporate sponsorship, but by becoming a 501c3, we're technically becoming a corporation. And that in and of itself is like, what? I
hear that. It's a very real dynamic tension as we navigate all of this, because there is a desire to provide access. There is a desire to make these things happen. But yeah, you're up against that. So I guess I wonder whether, this organization has this mantra, and I think it makes sense. We've kind of talked about why. But in the larger picture, is there any role, is there any appropriateness in these, Fortune 500 nominally straight organizations coming in and offering sort of a leg up or an allyship or a donation of some sort to the queer community?
I mean, sure, don't require your name to be all over the place. One, if you want to support us, do so without anything being given back. I mean, it's not, so you're basically requiring that they put your name just all over the place or you don't get this money. That's not being an ally, that's capitalism.
Yeah, and now, being kind of inextricably tied to that brand, which, again, as we've said, causes a lot of problems because a lot of these brands do leave us in awkward positions that have flawed policies and all these different problems. So that being said, on a more micro level, depending on who you ask, and I know I'm opening up a little bit of a can of worms here, but one of the A's that's occasionally thrown in at the end of LGBTQIAA++, et cetera, is ally. And I'm wondering whether we're talking about QueerBomb or maybe Pride more generally speaking, whether there is room for allies, what that looks like, how to be a good ally without just coming in and sort of announcing your presence and taking over the space. Would you, at QueerBomb specifically, would you encourage straight, cisgendered folks to come out and show their support?
I would say that, QueerBomb is an inclusive space, and we aren't going to discriminate on any...
I recognize you're not asking people for their gay card at the door.
Yeah, we're not going to gatekeep. I'm just going to say that. But I feel like if you do identify as a straight person that is cisgendered or whatever, and you want to come to a Pride event and show your support, try not to take up space where other people in the community could be. There are ways to show your support and come to events and be helpful. Don't be one of those people that says, I'm straight, but I support you. Because we don't need to hear that. We
really don't need to hear from.
Yeah, the people that matter know you're straight. And we're not trying to convert anybody. We just want to not have things thrown at us for being who we are. We don't want to be locked up for driving through a state that doesn't feel like we should be there. We want to be able to just live our lives and not have to wonder if I'm going to get fired tomorrow for being gay or trans or black or whatever. There are ways to be an ally and not take up extra room where others could use it.
Yeah, I think that's really well said. So with that, I do want to jump on the lines and hear from Sheila in North Carolina. Sheila, you're on the air.
Hey, can y'all hear me?
Yeah, absolutely. What's on your mind tonight?
Hey, so I basically just wanted to talk about coming out for Pride, because that's something that I've been considering more and more. I was raised in a Protestant household, and I haven't lived with my parents for about 3 years. But recently, I've been feeling like it's been hard to really talk to anybody without, there's this whole side of me that people don't understand about me. Like, I'm trans and I'm not straight.
Mm-hmm.
So I ended up telling my parents, and my dad, who's actually, I thought my dad would be accepting about it because he's actually gay himself.
Mm-hmm.
And he absolutely rejected that. And oh yeah, I guess I should mention I came out as trans, pansexual, and atheist all at once.
In the same day? All right.
Congratulations.
The triple crown, as we call it. Yeah.
Good job.
Congratulations on that.
It was pretty hard. It was pretty hard to start, but it was, I think I handled it well enough. But it was just a bit, I guess, stressful because I don't know if it's repression or what, but my dad absolutely did not accept me being trans or an atheist.
Mm-hmm.
Despite being, I just sort of had this assumption. So that actually has gotten me a little bit worried about coming out at work, which is pretty much the last place I'm really going to need to come out publicly.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been trying to be more open with people at work about my sexuality, because I feel like talking about my sexuality and gauging people's reaction based on that makes it easier to come out as trans. I'm only out maybe to 4 people at work as trans. So it's been a little bit hard to work up the courage, though, living in the South. So I'm afraid I'm going to chicken out.
Yeah, right there in North Carolina, of all places. I mean, you're really at the vanguard of this fight.
Yeah, and that's a valid fear.
Yeah, and I don't think, well, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Sheila. I'll ask a question in a minute, but go ahead.
Okay, well, I was just going to say, it's pretty hard, too, because, I hope it's okay if I talk about trans stuff here as well.
Oh, but please do.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, as far as I'm aware, Walmart in North Carolina aren't really the best places as far as these bathroom bills that have been coming out. So that's just another huge uncomfortable thing for me, is that North Carolina, in my experience, just being here, has not been the best. And my coworkers, while they generally might seem accepting, I mean, I guess just irrationally knowing that my dad isn't straight and still was not accepting of a trans person just has me a little bit skeeved out. So I'm just, I don't know. I can handle myself well enough. I don't think I'm really going to be in danger, but I am sort of worried about people saying things like what they're going to think of me,
Yeah, I don't think that that's an irrational fear at all. I think that it makes good sense to be concerned. And while, I hope and want to live in a world where everybody is themselves, everybody is out and comfortable, I think that you are right to be kind of cautious and genuinely thinking about and considering whether or not coming out now or coming out at all in this situation is the right choice for you. The last thing I would ever tell you to do is to not do it, but I'm also going to say that if you do decide to do that, you need to be very careful and kind of aware of what some of the risks might include, and you may need some contingency plans in place in terms of what if I need to find a new place to live, what if I need to find a new job and things like that. I'm not hoping any of that for you, and I'd like to believe in 2019 that wouldn't be the case, but I think it would be naive to ignore the very real possibility of that.
Absolutely.
I don't know where you...
I mean, oh, go ahead.
Sheila, I don't know where you work, and we don't need to know for sure. We don't need to know. But if you do decide to move in that direction at all at work, I would visit your human resources first and find out what's going on with the company in this area before you made any move there. Some companies are pretty darn progressive inside. I was an organizational psychologist for almost 40 years, and there's some companies that are remarkably supportive. It's surprising. You wouldn't even know it from looking at the outside. But there's other companies that are not. And I don't know which one you are in, or you're probably one in the middle, but I'd find out and then proceed maybe with the best advice of somebody internal, like an HR person. But I agree with Christy. Be careful and do your homework before you move.
Yeah, that's pretty good advice. I probably wouldn't have come out to my parents as any of that if I didn't already move out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because they're pretty bad in that regard. I would have expected better of my dad, but I guess he sort of let me down.
Yeah, it sounds really devastating. I can only imagine how that feels, and I hope that you are getting some support on that. You know, I don't know exactly what that would look like for you. I imagine may include a therapist or counselor, and I would really encourage you to consider that, because that relationship with the father is incredibly important. And however you're feeling right now, I can only imagine that that's pretty devastating.
Yeah, I have a good circle of friends, and they're supportive and everything, but I haven't been to see a therapist yet.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm, just for the sake of my mental health, I've been trying not to talk to my parents as much, because they rejected it outright, and that makes me understandably really upset. So
yeah, absolutely.
I've been slowly trying to move away from them. Like, I don't have any social media with them added or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
I, tend to just come over now and then for social gatherings. But, it's funny, because I hope it's okay if I ramble about this for just a little bit. But despite how much disconnecting I did before I even came out, it still really hurt me.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, I felt like I was handling it really well, and then I went home and just cried, and I was a mess for 3 days. And in a way, it's still affecting me. But I will think about seeing a therapist. I guess I didn't even consider that.
Yeah, I think it's only human to be in tears over something like that.
Absolutely.
And, maybe it's an occupational hazard, but I can't imagine something like this not benefiting from therapy. And so I would definitely encourage you to consider that. And also, as you're, navigating whether to come out and what that might look like, and kind of safety planning and planning around that, that's something that also you could really benefit there from. And so I think that's a great place to start looking.
Okay.
Do you have community that you can go to and just enjoy connection with people on a regular basis?
Well, see, more or less, in person, I just have a couple of friends who know about this stuff. I have a huge group online of, well, not huge maybe, but a group online of really close supportive friends who know everything about me, and they're lovely and great. And I don't want to say I would die for them. I would live for them. But it's just online. So really in person, not so much.
I don't know where you live in North Carolina, but there's quite a few different, very open free thought groups around, especially in the Triangle area. There's the Triangle Free Thought, and they're pretty open, and I think it would be very welcoming. I've been
I'm
there.
sorry, what was that you said? Triangle something?
Triangle Free Thought. That's the name of the group. They've been around for 15 or 20 years. They're a very active group. They're an atheist group. They're very LGBTQ friendly. So if you're anywhere near them, you might go look them up. I know there's other groups. There's another group in Charlotte. If you get on meetup.com and look for Free Thought or Atheist or something like that, you're likely to find somebody. Like I say, I don't know where you live exactly, but maybe going there once every few months just to get around other people that'll accept you for who you are. That's worth a lot sometimes.
Yeah, and of course, keeping in mind things like the Secular Therapy Project, as well as ASECT, the American Association of Sexuality Educators, Counselors, and Therapists. God, I hope I pulled that off correctly. As just as great resources for how to find a therapist who's going to be trans positive, sex positive, and understanding of what you're going through.
And the ASEC meeting right now.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just making a joke.
Oh, I missed it. I'm sorry. I'll have to go back and watch the VOD. I don't know. I guess I didn't really expect such a positive turnout from calling y'all, but I've gotten a lot of really good advice.
Well, I definitely hope it helps. And again, we'll have links for all of this and make sure, you can remember all of the information there at the end of the episode. So thank you so much for calling. I have to say, I think I'm feeling it over here. I know about Darrel. I mean, we all just worry for what you're going through. I mean, when you say a Walmart in North Carolina, I hate to jump to the immediate stereotype, but trans safe and trans friendly aren't adjectives that immediately come to my mind. So while we encourage bravery, we definitely want to remind you to be safe.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sheila, one other
just
tip.
rattle off a quick,
You might go to Sheila, can you hear me?
Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, one other tip. You might go to recoveryfromreligion.org and hit the chat button and just ask one of our agents to help you find a group near you. They're very good. They're like experts at finding all sorts of stuff for people. You might get some resources from them and might find a local group too. And it's all confidential, so you don't have to tell anybody much.
Oh, perfect.
All right. Well, thank you so much for calling in. I hope that all of that helps. And please feel free to shoot us an email. That goes to everybody out there. We'd love to keep the conversation going, even as we see all of the calls on the line. But sex@atheist-community.org. We would love to hear from you and see what else we can offer.
All right. Thanks, y'all.
Absolutely. You have a great night. There are so many folks that I'm looking forward to talking to and that I want to make sure to get to, but I can't help but let this moment pass as we are talking about pride and talking about, pride acceptance of trans folks and how that seems to be more and more of a sticky issue. I don't want to overstate it, but, as a lot of folks in the queer community are becoming safer, as there's generally more acceptance, there's also some privilege, and that's not always being extended, and in fact is often being denied to trans members of the queer community.
That's true, unfortunately. It's a shame.
Yeah,
it really is.
I wish we had some pithy solution, but that's just unfortunately not where we're at right now. So I guess I would only take this moment to emphatically say that whether we're talking about QueerBomb or Pride in general, that trans folks belong in the queer community.
We wouldn't have Pride without them.
We would, without Marsha P. Johnson, without the drag queens at the Stonewall Inn. I mean, read your history books. The idea of excluding trans people from Pride is remarkably offensive, and we could spend the rest of the night talking about that and how frustrating it is to see. I think now a 9th murder of a trans woman in the past couple of months. It's diabolical.
And I believe the 4th one in Dallas.
I had not recognized that statistic. That's devastating.
Yeah, it's just.
Yeah. Okay. With that very pleasant note, I definitely wanted to make sure to speak to Joe. Joe, you were on the line with us. What's going on tonight?
Hi. So glad to be online with you guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just came back home to West Africa from college in America. And my sister just came out to me as bisexual. She introduced me to her girlfriend, and she's fucking amazing. Sorry for swearing.
That's wonderful.
Goddamn wonderful. Congratulations.
And I just love her so much, honestly. But my parents are pretty conservative. We're actually missionary kids here in West Africa.
Wow.
And she is moving to South Africa to go to college, and our parents really want her to do a theology major. And as she's been opening up to me since I've been back, she's been telling me that she would be willing, quote unquote, to go full Christian for our family, to not lose her community and the love she has for our parents. And at the same time, I came out as atheist to her, and she's been really accepting, which has been great. But I'm just really worried that she'll end up really losing herself and her identity. And I was just wondering how I could just really open up to her and just show her love regardless, and how to really help her understand and just really come to love herself and accept herself overall.
Yeah, Darrel, you have some experience between theological school versus sexuality.
Well, yeah, but this is your sister's journey, of course. And what I hear you saying is you want to be supportive of her journey, no matter what her choices are. You're just worried that her choices could be harmful to her, and you want to prevent that or help her see it. Does that sound accurate?
Yeah, I'd say so. It's more that I don't want her to change herself and like feel pressure to change because of our parents. I just want her to be true to herself, and I don't want to force her to see herself differently than she truly is. Like, as you said, it's her journey, and I just want her to, just really know herself and love herself for who she is and not be forced either way.
Well, let me suggest that. So she is thinking of going to some kind of a religious training program in a seminary or something like that.
Right. So she's wanting to get Christian counseling major. She really wants to just get a straight counseling major, but our parents just want her to really focus on the Christian emphasis of it all. So,
right. Well, if she gets a Christian counseling program, she's probably not going to get the best training. And I would simply encourage her to do her research, because those programs are pretty damn bad. But that's,
it's almost beside the point in certain ways, but I think that maybe your back door here is exactly what Darrel's saying, is to point out that a Christian counseling degree is not worth the paper it's printed on, and that she can do the most good for the Christian community by becoming a more conventional therapist. And even if she maintains her Christianity, that she would be much better off and better served to have a conventional counseling degree, which, separates out the whole question, maybe kind of sidesteps the real issues, but at the very least, it gives her an opportunity to sort of delay coming out, delay making a decision without sacrificing her career or sacrificing 4 years on a worthless degree.
There's one thing I
totally agree.
I'm sorry, Joe, I didn't mean to interrupt you. What did you say?
I totally agree, and that is what I tried to tell her over brunch earlier this week. And she did agree with me. It's just really the fear of losing family, because I don't think our parents would really be accepting, like not supporting, even less accepting of
even a conventional therapy degree is a bridge too far. Even if she maintains outwardly her religion, just going to a secular university would be too much for them?
I don't know. Honestly, I don't know, but it's really hard because our parents really just want her to have theology as her basis for her whole life.
Mm-hmm.
My younger sister, who's older than her, has gone to do that as well. And honestly, I don't care what she believes at all. I just really want her to be able to help people, because that's what she really wants.
Yeah.
Well, Joe, there's a couple things that come to my mind, and that is, first of all, she's not going to lose you no matter what choice she makes. Is that correct?
I honestly hope so, but I'm worried that if she really really goes all out for our parents to really make them proud over anything else, and as I said, going quote unquote full Christian, that she will lose the love and interest she has for me as a brother.
But my question is,
I did come out to her as atheist. So.
You're afraid she'll reject you, but you wouldn't reject her, I think is kind of what Darrel's clarifying.
As the previous caller said, I wouldn't die, but I would live for her.
Yeah.
All the way.
Well, keep in mind at every step, Joe, you are there to support her. It's her journey. And, my sense just from the stuff you just told us is she's not far behind you. Now, I don't mean that she's going to become an atheist, but she's already come out as bisexual. She's already introduced you to a girlfriend. She's made some positive, affirming steps for being who she is. And it's pretty hard to go back to being full Christian after you've done that. I'm just saying. But, she could be the first. I think the best thing you can do is just be supportive of her. Maintain contact. Be sure you have regular social time with her just to sit and talk and keep the connection alive and just enjoy who she is. And I'm pretty darn sure you'll see her blossom and grow in a way that I can't predict. I shouldn't say that, but you've already told me that there's quite a bit going on there. She's thinking things through and she's taking some positive action for her life. And congratulations to her. No matter where she goes, she's already doing some pretty good stuff.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm not expecting you guys to have all the answers, of course, but just as we close our conversation, I just really want to thank all three of you guys for the amazing work you guys are doing at the ACA and just helping people being more inclusive and more loving of all people around them. And I just want to thank you guys. You guys are amazing.
Absolutely. Well, we appreciate you saying that. And I guess to just say it all again, I may encourage her to avoid a specifically Christian degree, but otherwise, as Darrel keeps pointing out, it's all about just offering her the love and support that she asks for. Your support of her is not necessarily about giving her advice or trying to fix any of these problems for her, but just giving her the things that she asks for, being loving, being in connection and community with her. And we hope it turns out for the best. I really appreciate you giving us a call.
Okay, thank you so much. I just really want to thank the screen caller for just letting me call in ahead of a few other callers who I know have very important things to talk about as well. So I just want to thank the screen caller and you guys for really being an atheist blessing to me and to my family. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. You have a great night. And feel free to reach out by email or anything else to any of the callers that we don't have an opportunity to get to. That definitely we want to keep the conversation going and be able to communicate via email and these different things. We have just a couple of minutes left, so I'm going to give both of y'all just kind of a quick moment in case you had anything else to jump in before we grab one last phone call. Okay, let's do it. So, Myrna, we have just a couple of minutes left, but I didn't want to miss the opportunity to speak to you tonight. Are you there?
Hello.
Hi, what's on your mind?
I'm in quite a Christian circle, but I'm a girl who likes girls and then gets quite a lot of hate, and I feel like at the moment I have to choose between God and the church and who I think I like, and I've kept praying for a long time.
Sorry, we got just a burst of bird there. Okay.
Sorry, that was my phone. Yeah.
So you are a Christian, you are a lesbian, and you're trying to figure out basically how to choose between which one is the real you or which one you're going to stick with? Is that kind of where we're at here?
Yeah, because the Bible obviously is very clearly against that kind of identity, and the church provides a lot of good things, and I still believe in God, but then like I've been praying for a long time for God to make me straight, and I feel like he's just said no. I just don't know what to do with that.
Yeah, it's a tough question to ask, but I know that since you're giving us a call, you have some idea of kind of the answer we're going to point you towards. It's certainly your choice, and it's not anything we can do for you. But I suspect that you're beginning to realize that there aren't a lot of options here for you. I don't even know that necessarily that you have a choice, because if you're calling us, makes me wonder if that choice has already been made for you by just the reality of the circumstance. Does that resonate? Does that feel true at all?
I don't know.
Well, it's a scary thing to admit. It's a scary thing to come to terms with. And I fully respect and recognize that there is this fear of losing your community, of losing your identity in a lot of ways. And, I, of course, would say that there are other communities. There are great communities. There are, frankly, better communities than the ones you would find inside of a church. And there are plenty of beautiful things about your identity that you can now explore and enjoy, rather than feeling hamstrung and trapped in this identity as a Christian. But it seems like you likely know the arguments. You likely know what you're up against. Certainly we can rattle through them quickly, but just with our last couple of minutes here, I kind of wonder if you already know when you picked up the phone to give us a call.
Yeah, I kind of know the arguments, and I kind of go back and forth with myself.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
were you born in this religion, Myrna?
That's like kind of complicated. Like I went to Sunday school, but then it's kind of like cultural Christianity, and then when I went to school, I kind of fell into like an evangelical friendship group. And
If you'd have been going to school in, I don't know, Saudi Arabia, do you think you'd have fallen into that same religion, or would have been a different one?
Well, you never know. What religion do they have in there? Islam, was it?
Right. So I'm just asking, is your falling into this religion a function of where you lived in the first place?
I'm not sure. I think it's a combination of that, and then like personal encounters with what I believe is God. So.
I was curious, Ash, did you have something you were thinking there?
Well, I feel like you don't necessarily have to give up your faith if you truly resonate with it in order to also accept yourself as you are. I don't personally believe in God, but that doesn't mean you can't. You know what I mean? I feel like you don't have to choose between the two if you don't want to.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be either or. It really doesn't. If you feel like there is a God and that helps you through your daily life and gets you through hard times, then by all means. Because there's enough strife and hard times out there to go around that if your faith helps you, you don't feel like you have to give that up just because we don't share that with you.
Well, I don't know if it helps or not, because it does help sometimes, but other times it kind of fuels a lot of self-hatred
and that's the last thing you want, honestly.
Yeah, it's worth recognizing that there are gay Christians in the world, and that may be a route for you, but it does begin to beg the question of why. You know, if the Bible says this about me, why would I want to be a part of it? And that's not a question I can answer for you. But, you know, I recognize that this is a stressful and difficult thing to walk through. I can only imagine how devastating. And when I say I can only imagine, I went through something not the same, but very similar. And I eventually realized that I just could not. The justifications, the logical leaps, that they just didn't fit for me. But in any case, we aren't looking to breed more atheists. We're looking to increase global happiness. We're looking to make the world a better place. Things like the ACA don't necessarily exist to make everybody atheist or to delete religion from the world. But it is our belief that doing that would increase global happiness. And that's kind of what our ultimate goal is. So if for you, you're happier where you are, then I think we would mostly encourage you to go for that, just recognizing that you may not be as happy as you think as you get further and further down that road. Certainly that's a reality that you'll have to come to and a choice that you'll have to make as you go along.
Yeah, I think, like, we're all expected to really be happy on the outside, but I'm, like, really not most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds very, very emotional for you right now. Is that?
Well, well, it's kind of feels a bit pathetic because I know other people have it a lot worse. So, like,
you know, there are people starving, there are people suffering, there are people wrongly imprisoned, and certainly we can always use that argument to irrationally de-justify our own experiences. But I would just let you know that your feelings are very human, that it makes all the sense in the world to feel betrayed, to feel angry, to feel scared. You know, I don't want to speak those things over you, but I think it makes sense to be experiencing a lot of those types of emotions, and I don't think there's anything cowardly or weak or selfish about having those thoughts or having those feelings. So, you know, I would say that as we get close to the end of the show, that the thing I would really recommend to you is just to continue, you know, whether it's watching this show or others, that embrace or encourage that gay identity, that you would just continue to spend some time there, that you would become more comfortable that way and more accepting of yourself by just that exposure to queer culture, to lesbian ideas, towards these things that are going to be sex positive and encouraging, and be patient with yourself because this is hard.
thank you.
Well, I certainly hope that helps. Is there, was there anything else y'all needed to add?
Just be kind to yourself, firstly.
And I would definitely encourage you as well to reach out and shoot us an email if you would, because I would love to connect. Even as we're kind of wrapping up, I can hear how challenging all of this is for you. And so I'm going to go ahead and keep you on the line as we kind of close out the show for tonight. But then I'd love to touch base here in a minute if we can.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll be right with you. This is important stuff.
Absolutely.
You know, sorry, Darrel. I just, you know, as we started this show, you know, it was almost a year ago that we started getting into talks about this version of secular sexuality and figuring out what we were going to do and just beginning the process. You know, there's certainly the question of why. You know, why do we need this show? And I think that we see tonight very clearly that the trauma experienced by the queer community is significant, and religion is a huge, overwhelming part of that. Absolutely. For so many of us. So, yeah, on that kind of heavier note, Darrel, I do want to really thank you for jumping on and joining with us tonight. Always great to have your expertise, and looking forward to seeing you here at the end of the month.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to being down there. I haven't been down to Austin in a while, so
yeah. to actually meet you in person here in studio. Yeah, I guess not. And then Ash, of course, congratulations, I think, are in order.
Thank you.
For a successful 10th QueerBomb. And maybe some ice cream and sleep also
oh
in
my
order
goodness.
Moving forward.
I hope to finally get some restful sleep one of these days.
Yeah. So thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to everybody in the audience and everybody who called in, and especially the folks that we didn't get a chance to speak to. Please feel free to call us in the future, to shoot us an email. We would love to touch base in any way that we can. And thank you all for joining us. With that being said, Darrel, I guess it's time to say that we hope that everybody watching would, either go out and give themselves a big old orgasm,
or give someone else an orgasm.
Better yet, give somebody else an orgasm. Y'all have a great night.